Okay, so good morning and welcome to Genus's monthly webinar. My name is Grant Conroy and I'll be hosting today's session. And with me is Michelle Osry. Michelle leads Deloitte Canada's family enterprise consulting practice. She works with family businesses, family offices, and wealthy families on issues of governance and generational transitions. There should be links to both of our LinkedIn profiles in the chat if you'd like to connect with either of us. They're there for you. So today, Michelle and I will be talking about, or mainly Michelle, family, money, and purpose, the art of thinking and talking together. In this webinar, we hope to cover why it can be so difficult to talk about things like family and money and our shared or individual purpose. Also go over a roadmap for productive family dialogue and get some tools to use in everyday conversations that are important or that matter. So just before we jump in, a few housekeeping tips for you. If you maximize the browser, you'll be able to see the presentation a little bit better and a better viewing experience. And also you should be able to minimize the headshots of Michelle and I as well. I think there's a little button there that makes the presentation bigger or smaller, and you don't need to see us. So if you do have any technical trouble, that time-tested solution of leaving and coming back in, or as the tech help desk like to say, turn it off and turn it on again, does seem to work. So if you do have issues, maybe try that. And then if you have questions as we go through, feel free to put them in the chat on the right-hand side there, and we'll deal with, well, we're going to have a question and answer session at the end. We'll get to them then. So just a little bit different. This webinar is anonymous, so the chat is private, just so as everyone can share freely and openly and maybe feel a bit more confident about asking anything that they wish to know. And if you'd like questions answered after the webinar, if there's more than we can get through, just add your name on that chat when you put it in, because it is anonymous, and then we can contact you afterwards if we need to. So I'm just going to do a quick land acknowledgement, and we'd like to start by extending our gratitude to the Indigenous peoples, specifically the Coast Salish, the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish and Musqueam, whose lands we're honoured to speak to you from today. We do this to acknowledge the past and reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations, our own understanding of Indigenous peoples and their cultures, and Canada is home to Indigenous peoples from across the land, and we're grateful to have this opportunity to meet and work on this territory. So to get going, we are just going to start with a poll, which again is on the right hand side, and you should see this pop up, and you can just answer any of the answers that should pop up for you. And Graham, if you could just put that up now, we should see that. So the question is, how do you communicate as a family around shared wealth? There's a few options there, and just pick whichever one is closest. And we can see, I can see answers coming in. So it looks like informally ad hoc discussions and talk about what we need to, when we need to, are winning at the moment. Some people do have formally sort of set meetings, so that's encouraging. And then just as a follow-up question, what is the most, or what are the most challenging topics that you face when talking about shared wealth? And again, feel free to just put in the chat there any of your answers. They are anonymous, they are private. So we're just trying to get an understanding of what it is that people face as problems. So what are the challenging topics that you face when talking about shared wealth? We see a few things coming in there. Control, does fair mean equal? Estate planning. A lot of control, actually. Sharing, expectations, articulating expectations and need versus wants. Too many dollars too early. Estate settlement, when to pass funds on. So there seems to be a bit of a theme of estate planning, passing funds to the next generation, control, and estate planning, I guess, seems to be the one. So with this, I'll hand it over to Michelle, and she can start the presentation. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks very much, Grant. And thank you to everyone for joining the conversation today. I have to admit right up front, it's super challenging not seeing you. But I do see Grant, and I wish that I could see you to have this conversation. So if you wish to interact in any way by throwing in a question, I'll keep my eye on the chat and try to incorporate it. I really do love seeing some of the things that you do think are tricky. I love there was an answer that says, actually, not very much. We're open. So your practices, whoever said that, would be really interesting when we get to the halfway mark. The topic, family, purpose, and money, the art of thinking and talking together. We're going to lean on the art of thinking and talking together, and lean even more heavily on the word talking, communication and conversations, and why it can be complex, and what are the practical tools, how do we learn from the sciences in order for our conversations to be more productive. And the word that I will use within the presentation is more generative. There's so much to talk about. I had a quick flick through my own slides this morning, and I thought, oh gosh, we could spend a whole day on each one of these, and I'd love to, but I have 30 minutes and I see the clock ticking. So I want to just set your expectations. Please come along for the ride, and then these resources will be sent to you by the team. And anything in here that interests you to take a deeper dive, I know Grant will be only too willing to do some little research or connect with me for things that I can send your way. So I also want to note that a lot of the pictures in this presentation deck are my own pictures of things that have appealed to me. This particular photo I took in New York at the Getty, because it reminded me, it's from the artist of Klimt, it reminded me of a chaotic design. And a chaotic design is a wonderful model given to the fact that you must start with purpose before you move through your vision and strategy and policies and practices and principles. So it's just a very good reminder that we, at our peril, do we start with policies before purpose. So I just throw that in there. Okay, so let's go. Let's get going. I am fairly sure that it's a safe assumption to say all of the points on the slide are not foreign to you. You probably live them as families of shared wealth, or you've heard them, or you've read about them. Families are emotional systems. If we cannot find a way to express our emotions or to deal with them, if they are not being dealt with at the boardroom table or at the shareholders AGM, you will find a way. You will go to Twitter. You will have dreadful Thanksgiving meals. You will find a way to have your points made. So we recognize right up front, families are emotional systems and all the complexity that comes with that. The picture here is a picture that is of a sculpture. If you look really closely, you will see that it is pieces of iron which have been welded together by the Chinese artist Weiwei. I took this picture in Jerusalem outside the Israeli Museum, and I loved it because it made me think of families. The beautiful part of Weiwei's tree is he says, for him it was a global sculpture, in that the patina of the iron goes into the soil and comes back up and influences the sculpture. So we all influence each other. We are all interdependent, and yet we are all distinctly unique, and nothing will change that. So in families of shared wealth or shared assets or shared systems or shared roles or shared businesses or family offices or shared cabins or cottages, you will be dealing with the mix of identity, power, and love. And we could spend a long time together talking about the dance between power and love. There is the need within each of us, the beautiful quote that Grant started the session with by Martin Luther King, power without love, love without power. So the intricate dance between the two and the importance of that. And while it is rich with possibility, it is rich with opportunity, I have to say I envy the families that I work with, that even if they're having a terrible time around the table, they're still together. and they are around that table and all the possibility that comes with that. And yet, being mindful that it is also a complex cocktail. And there are structural pitfalls, there are all sorts of things that make it fertile ground for conflict. And that's really what we're diving into today. I want to give a nod to Bowen, Dr. Murray Bowen, and the work that he did over the decades on understanding family systems. It's really just a nod to say we're mindful in any presentation, conversation, or dialogue regarding the complexity of conversation, that we remind ourselves of the complexity of families, that all the bullets that you see on this slide, whether it's your birth order, whether it's epigenetic trauma, whether it's one branch of the family is emotionally cut off, whether it's triangulation, the process of adult self-differentiation. These are all the things we give a nod to, the complexity. And we don't make light of them, and they carry through with us in this conversation. So we always do the Jolly 3 circles, and I recently discovered the 4 circles, and I'm quite intrigued by the 4-circle model by Dean Fowler, and I recently read about it, and I really liked it. And so I'm just throwing this in here more so that you can have it to go. Again, setting up the imperative for the communication tools we have. So included in this is a circle on the individual, recognizing that drive each of us have to fulfill our own unique purpose, and recognizing that that adds to the complexity when we look at these intersecting circles and the governance that we need across all of them and the conversations we need across all of them, that our ability...
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Graham.
I was just going to add, for the business circle, that could read enterprise. That could be a portfolio, it could be wealth, it could be assets. It doesn't necessarily need to be a factory making widgets for people watching.
Yeah, really good. I'm going to actually change that for next time. It should say enterprise. And so your enterprising activity or your shared assets is really good. It's a good catch. Thank you. So I'm sorry if it feels rushed, but really what I want to do in the slides that I've shown is just set up a recognition and a respect for the complexity which you as participants are experiencing or that you're subject to. Setting up essentially the real need to deconstruct and to understand and to optimize our communication as families, the way in which we do that. So what I want to do in the next several minutes is to offer you tools, research, practical tips and takeaways so that you can take that into your own families with your facilitators, with your guides, or just with each other. So in reading these slides this morning, I actually recommitted to do a better job with my own spouse and children, thinking, my gosh, I'm falling into all of these things again. So it's an everyday thing. Why do conversations get difficult? I think I've alluded to it. In a shared wealth context, hierarchy can often preclude dialogue. Emotional temperature is higher. We referenced your emotional systems as families. Lack of transparency can be quite normal, just the speed of the day, but it can lead to a lack of trust. It's very easy to misinterpret information from informal channels, receiving information at different times, different levels of knowledge, those in the know, those not in the know. Could be branch affiliations, our branch, your branch. And there could be other stakeholders that just add to the complexity, as well as just personal patterns, whether it be health, whether it be well-being, whether it be addictions, all the things that come with being human in our 4 circles. So conversations get difficult for many reasons. They also get difficult simply by the design of who we are as humans. So let me start with some frameworks. I hope that this slide is not looking foreign to anyone, but if it is, then I'd say, great. This is the awakening. The awakening that we don't just talk about facts. My fact is not necessarily your fact, and it's quite an astounding thing to become aware of. That very often our facts are our perceptions, and that's a perceived reality. And so the tip of the iceberg tends to be what we call the facts. And then we have our emotional responses, whether conscious or unconscious, and all of the stories that we tell ourselves, our experiences and our wants and needs, make up who we are and how we respond. So a lot of wonderful work on this particular framework that we can deep dive together, but not today, but at some point. So for any that feel, very often I feel people say, oh, do you do the soft stuff? This is all the soft stuff. And I say, no, this is actually the hard science. And so I throw this slide in. We could also spend a lot of time on this around the neuroscience of behavior and communication and the simple ways in which we can upregulate or downregulate each other. There's tons of research that have said the way you start a conversation can significantly impact its outcome, just the way you start it. I think it might have been Gottman that said the first 90 seconds, if you're going to make up a mess up in the first 90 seconds, stop, just stop, have tea, start again. Because a lot is now being written, and there's many presentations I see that talk about the amygdala and the primitive brain and fight or flight or fear. All of this is really important for us to bear in mind when we say, as families of wealth, navigating money, navigating estate planning, navigating the size of things, navigating the sharing, the fairness, fair versus all of these extraordinary conversations that we need to come to, we must be mindful of the neuroscience of our behavior. We're very predictable. So our ability, and I wish I could have drawn a heart on this slide, but all of the wonderful research starting in the 70s that has connected how our heart and our brain are connected and how we process what we hear and see and think and feel. It all comes along for the ride when we look at the subtitle of the presentation, The Art of Thinking and Talking Together. So as we go to the next tools, please, I encourage you, be mindful that there is a lot here. And I've actually got a book which I'm adding to the resources for you, a wonderful book called Into the Magic Shop. And it's written by James Doty, who heads up neuroscience at Stanford. And the book is called A Neurosurgeon's Quest to Discover the Mysteries of the Brain and the Mysteries of the Heart. So there's some wonderful, rich learning in the mysteries of the brain and the heart that are actually not so mysterious. They've been demystified for us. And so we borrow from these in our work together. Okay, so patterns. I'm going to take you through a few slides on patterns of communication. This is the most common. And I think 3 people in the poll said, we don't talk about it. And I'm surprised it's not more common. There are some things we just don't talk about. Because why? Because why would we? It's unpleasant and it disturbs everybody and we get agitated and we don't have the skills to navigate. I often find myself saying out loud to my own spouse, this is not a topic we're good at navigating. I know exactly what's going to happen. And this is a pattern. And so to be kind to yourselves as families, if you are using this as a solution, you're doing it for good intention. The good intention is we love each other. Why on earth would we want to get agitated? Unfortunately, the solution becomes a problem at some point. And I'm sort of saying that in the assertive. I'd like to say it might become a problem. I'll go with might. It's quite likely to become a problem if you avoid these conversations altogether. And so doing that, one of the things about avoidance is you don't build your skills. So when families say we never, ever have a debate, it's telling that they have not built the skills of navigating a difference. So we want to learn and grow in our confidence, the art of thinking and talking together. This is what we want. But here's another pattern. This is the most dreadful. I can't bear it when I'm in it, and it's very tough when a family gets into this pattern. It's the chicken and egg of unproductive conversation. Eventually, we can't remember who started it because now everyone's going into the circle and it's a vortex. And you might even know, sometimes I like to even label, oh my gosh, we're in circular causation number 5, where it's like a loop. It's just we get into our loop again. And the loop is, and if you've experienced this, you say exactly the same things every single time with the great hope that it will get the other person to understand you, but they go into their loop. And it's maddening, discouraging, frustrating. It's all of those. Another pattern is when we try to drag someone else into the dyadic conversation between the two of us. It really feels like a good idea. Sometimes it is a good idea, particularly if you have someone who has the skills to navigate the triangle with you. This is sometimes called the drama triangle, and I really wish I could remember the name of the psychologists that coined it. Would be good to acknowledge. And also those who have called this triangle the transformation triangle, how to get out of your drama triangle. But first and foremost, recognizing that it is a pattern, and you will get into a pattern of pulling someone else in, and that someone else most likely is not going to be able to help you, but will actually keep you in the triangle rather than encouraging you to address it directly, that independent coach or mentor that will send you back to the person you really do need to be having the
Michelle,
conversation
just on that, do we tend to pull in the person that we think is going to validate our position in the conversation? Is that why we do it?
Yes, well, this, I'm not giving you a scientific research response, but in my experience, definitely, we would like a compassionate, someone who will say, I understand your view, and then they head off to help the other person. And what happens in the drama triangle, the helper essentially allows the others, the victim and the persecutor, to stay in their chairs, and then they switch chairs. So the victim starts to feel persecuted, and the persecutor says, actually, I'm the victim. And no one can actually agree on who the victim is, and the helper is running between the two. So it is wonderful when you start the triangle to get a sympathetic ear, but it's not actually what you need most. This is the most dangerous of pattern, and this is when families accidentally, I say, get divided and conquered. And so sometimes it starts off through avoidance, sometimes it starts off through a triangle. It's just without the ability to navigate, you find your team, and essentially you become us against them. Sometimes it's a cross-generational team, which can be particularly dangerous. Mum joins with one of the sons, dad joins with one of the daughters, dad joins with one of the sons. And it sets up an incredibly dangerous dynamic, if I can call it that, worrying dynamic, damaging dynamic. So these are the patterns that we become aware of. And if we can catch them early enough and reverse and navigate again, so much the better for our families. Families are incredibly resilient. I have enormous respect for the families that come back to the table to try again. Trying again without new tools, without new skills, without new awareness gets us back to our circular. So what I want to do in the next few slides is to really offer you some tools and frameworks. So Shine, I love the work of Shine. His work and book, Humble Inquiry, essentially is based on, and this is again from the Getty, amazing enough, one day I saw this picture and I thought, oh, this is so perfect. It goes with the proverb, or the saying in the Talmud, we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. And there is some extraordinary research here underlying Shine's model. And I'd like to walk you through it if you want to just take a look at the slides for the minute, where essentially we're invited into this possibility that there are filters and biases, cultural, our experiences, our wants and needs, that predispose us, that predispose our nervous system to what we see and what we hear. So we think that what we see and hear must surely be the fact, but actually our nervous system is very proactive. It's scanning the environment based on our experiences, our biases, our traumas, our worries, our concerns, and actually impacting what we see and what we hear. And there's also some extraordinary work done on the role of language, that even our language and learning of language impacts what we are able to talk about and what we're able to see and hear. So I've touched very lightly on that, but if you can hold that possibility as we go through this framework, that we have the capacity for extreme distortion. And if you can add that much doubt in your conversation, could it be that I might not be hearing and seeing? I want to add this little example that I've given in previous presentations, so I hope this isn't a repeat for anybody, but one of my first real understandings of distortion ability was when I landed up in the wrong art class, actually in the wrong class altogether, and it was an art class, and it was a art class that required, it was fine art, and the students were drawing a chair. And when I realized that I was in the wrong class, and this was, in my 30s, I had gone to a particular class in Toronto. I said, "Oh, excuse me, I'm in the wrong class. I'll just slip out quietly." And the teacher said, "No, why don't you draw the chair? You're here for the night. You've come all the way." And I said, "I just really can't draw." And he said, "Just draw what you see." So there I set about with the pencil and the paper, and I did my very best to get the thing on the paper to look like the chair, but it wouldn't, my chair would barely, the seat part wouldn't, it just could not get to the right angles. And he came over to me and he said, "Do you realize that you're not looking at the chair while you're drawing? You are assuming what it looks like. So if you come with me, is this side longer than this side? Yes, it is. Well, then draw that on your piece of paper." And I realized to my shock that if I actually drew exactly what I saw, I could actually draw a chair. So this may sound like a very strange story, but for those who don't draw, try it out. It's amazing how we distort what we see. I proved it to myself. So hold for the moment, the observation is particularly distorted. Then we react. We tell ourselves a story based on our programming. We have emotions and feelings which attend to what we think we've heard or what we think we've seen. This will all take place in a split second and informs our analysis and our judgment. And informing our analysis and judgment, which then informs our action. Have you heard of something that says knee-jerk? Have you seen in yourself or others when somebody says something and someone fires back? Even think of the language I'm using. This is speed of reaction. That does not mean you did not go through all of these boxes. This means you flew through all of these boxes without giving yourself options. You do not pause long enough to say, what might I be hearing and seeing? What story might I be telling myself? What need or want is influencing the way in which I am analyzing? What is the spectrums of feelings I am feeling? None. None is never the answer. Happy, sad, mad, glad. There's a limited range. Bewildered, indignant, disappointment, discouraged, enthusiastic, stunned. These are more options. If you can get in touch, isn't that funny? In touch with that spectrum, it is the frontier for the art of how we think and talk together. Shine gives us a wonderful tool. To slow this circuit down, he says, ask a genuine question, a curious question, a question that says, did I hear that right? I need to hear again. Now, not like this. Did I hear that right? Now, that's going to probably send someone else into their circuit. But could I ask you to explain that again? I'd like to understand your view. That is the simplest question. Tell me more. Could you say that again, please? So here we have tool number one, takeaway number one, which is essentially a tool, shine cycle.
I don't know if
okay,
it's really through communication, Michelle, but just as you're going through that, we've got little kids, and as soon as I'm in another room and I hear a bang and then one of them cry, I go in and assume one of them's done something to the other one, and I'm not using vision and everything. And you do sometimes run in mad, and then or you ask a question, what happened? But already I've got my mind made up that one of them hurt the other one. So
yes, or did you do? Yeah. Okay, great, exactly. Let's go to this one. So this is actually my favorite framework, and I'm going to have to explain it in a few minutes, but I encourage you to read more on it. So using what we've just learned from Shine about the importance of inquiry, of asking questions, of pausing, of taking your time. This is a dialogue framework by Arthur Sharma, a senior professor at MIT who did a lot of research based on the wonderful research of others, Isaac's being one of them, in the field of generative dialogue. And there's a lot on the slide, but if you can travel with me, I'll set it out. There are two axes. The vertical axis is essentially looking at, on the bottom half, it's looking at two quadrants that stay in the past. On the top half, it's looking at two quadrants that take you into new territory. On the bottom half, if we're looking at the horizontal axis, we're looking at the difference between groups of family versus some family. So I'll walk you through it. Bottom left, polite. This is the quadrant in which we will, and yes to Gina, we're definitely sharing these slides. So sorry that it's racing so quickly. Bottom left, polite. We enter into conversations this way. And very often that's where we stay. This is very common in corporate environments where you walk into the meeting and you think to yourself, nothing will change in this meeting. We will stay incredibly professional and polite. And you might grumble to yourself or think, oh my gosh, this is a terrible waste of time. And everybody complains afterwards. That is a perfectly non-productive, nothing new generated. In that quadrant, we get along to get along. We avoid as a pattern. We do not reflect, and we most certainly do not really speak our minds, so to say. Now, politeness doesn't necessarily mean all families polite looks the same way. Some families polite looks like yelling. So culturally, they could yell at each other, and that's actually still in the polite bottom left. The trajectory from polite to breakdown is actually can be a productive thing. It moves you out of the logjam of not speaking your views. Unfortunately, on the bottom part of these quadrants, the debate is really simply a speaking and a listening with your own view in mind. So I would listen long enough to Grant to say, aha, that's your view, is it? Well, I'll tell you why I don't agree. And then you listen, you go, I knew that's what he was going to say. Here's exactly why that's not right. So the debate can feel very productive, but what you very fast learn is no one changes their mind, or it's very rare that anyone changes their mind in debate. What can happen is it gets nasty. So where you lose respect, which is the price of entry to any productive conversation, when you lose respect or kindness in that breakdown room, someone leaves it, either by slamming the door, or by saying, I'm never coming back, or by simply saying, I'm done for today. And that could be the best thing to happen. I'm done for today. And we start again in the polite quadrant, and we try again. Without the tools of inquiry, now we go into that third quadrant, top right, where we have the possibility. How do we get to the top right? Empathetically. I need to be able to say to Grant, who's the only person I can see here, could you please, Grant, explain to me, why is it you hold that view? And I'm not going to listen to validate or or disconfirm. I'm going to listen to genuinely understand, as if I was going to take Grant's position. I would be able to, if I was to say to you, now I want you to switch sides. I want to hear you, Grant, give my view with all the love and compassion you can muster. Sometimes you'd be able to say, I'm not ready yet. I don't understand you at all. Well, keep inquiring, right? So suspend judgment. Grant hears a huge bang in the room next door, and he walks in, he says, kids, what happened here? I want to understand, right? So you can almost feel the difference in the energy in the room when people lean in to listen and they park their own positions versus hold their own positions. When this occurs, you have the potential to move to the holy grail of flow or emergent possibility, top left. In the top left, we listen not only empathetically. So in the one, we don't listen at all. We listen comfortably. In the next one, we listen with our position in mind. That's a little better than nothing, I suppose. Then we listen empathetically, and then we listen generatively, which is to say we listen for the new together. We listen for what might be possible based on all that we know in our quadrant of inquiry. We create new rules. In the estate plan, we say, what might serve the family? What might serve our mutual purpose? Oh, we don't have a mutual purpose. What shall we do now? Oh dear, this isn't working. What do we do? I don't know. As the advisor, I don't know. I can tell you this sounds wrong, this sounds right, but let's inquire and see what emerges together. Generative conversation. Okay. We move to a few more tools to send your way. Gottman had a lot of prime time exposure over the last few years, which is wonderful. In fact, I mentioned Gottman at one of my presentations several years ago. So many of you will be familiar. So there's only 2 slides. Always good to be reminded of these. Gottman said, when the 4 horsemen come clopping into town, beware, be careful. This is where damage takes place in relationships. This is the hurtful territory. Who are the horsemen? Criticism, defensiveness, contempt, stonewalling. Criticism is where you go after someone's character. Grant, you are so...
It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard.
Something. It is hard. And typically it says, oh, in fact, you are always that. Right? So it's we become very dramatic in our character attacks when we get upset. And that's okay. That's just the default. But if you realize that if you go back to our cognitive science slide, you are about to downregulate the other person or your family's ability to respond well, because they will move into defense. Grant, you are always. Grant says, actually, I'm never. Right? So now we're in breakdown. And if we can't get out that loop-de-loop, we are in trouble for a productive meeting about money, a productive meeting about purpose. Purpose, obviously, the thing that gives us joy, our meaning in life, and we trip over the things where you may have heard yourself say, I can't believe we're fighting about this. We should be so thankful. Well, no one feels very thankful right now, right? You're in this dangerous territory in the way that you're talking to each other.
I was just going to say, for the interest of time, maybe we could share these afterwards with everybody. And if there's questions, they could come back, and then we can sort of skip through these ones a little bit quick on the antidotes, if that's...
Yes. I'm doing that. Okay. Quicker, you're saying. Okay. Contempt, extreme criticism. Now we're getting into mockery and sarcasm. Stonewalling, the quiet anxiety attack. We have now failed at talking. We now become non-responsive. This is clearly when we are out of talk. Through research, Gottman has provided us with good news. His tools, rather than criticize, complain. Say how you feel. Say why you're afraid. Move into vulnerability. I really worry when. I'm so afraid that I feel this. It allows the other to exercise an antidote of accepting influence. I can see it. I can see when you say that it must make you feel that. How might we? Repair, putting money in the bank is often what we call it. Just put money in the emotional bank. Use gratitude, thanks, kindness, kind words. Throughout the day, start building repair that allows the accepting of influence to take seed. Soothing and regulating, for those that have family meetings or informal family meetings, I highly encourage that you look at the rules of soothing and regulating. The first slide I gave on how to upregulate or downregulate, you can become aware of those. Soothing essentially requires us to take breaks where you are entirely flooded, where your anxiety is creating a tunnel for you. You can only see or hear one thing and you can't think at all. When that circuit is no longer able, you can't reverse back to saying, say that again. Just take a break. Get yourself back into regulation, 20 minutes or a day. So that's Gottman. We're almost there. So practices to support your family conversations. All of the things I've just said are tools and tips and frameworks to support you. And I've put some, these seem so jolly simple, but they're so jolly important. So find your bearings in the midst of a family meeting. What am I thinking? Am I thinking? What story am I telling myself? What worry do I have? What negative assumptions am I telling myself about my family and about myself? Sincerity, patience, curiosity, gratitude, inquiry, knowing yourself, knowing what stresses you, being open to the perspectives of others, suspending a process. All of these practices, my wish is that it will help you to build confidence for the very complex and wonderful topics that you need to talk and think about together. This was the bonus encore slide, but I'm going to slip it in and acknowledge it. It comes to you. And it essentially, it's a beautiful, I didn't acknowledge, did I? I don't know if I acknowledged it. I need to do that. This is from Dennis Jaffe, although I've written it in our own words. But Dennis Jaffe wrote a wonderful article recently in Forbes. And I'll give you the first one. Elders in an estate plan. If you were to say, not unlike my children, I've been very lucky and fortunate, and can point to those who have contributed to my success. And I trust my children because I've taught them what I've learned. I've taught them my shared experience and I've helped them make good decisions. Versus negative assumptions. We really need to protect everything from these kids. We're not sure that they will be able to figure it out. Let's not tell them right now. Let's keep this on a need-to-know basis. Probably leave it best until you're not here. You do the succession plan because it's your right to do it. On and on we can go with some of the advice that our families are given that do not bear well, as we know, many of these stories, going right back to the beginning of the presentation. Families are emotional systems. It's fertile ground for misunderstanding, complex cocktail of identity, power, and love. So these are some of the assumptions, and I'll definitely give Grant the reference to the Forbes article. Voila, I think I went 5 minutes over. Here are some resources. I took a picture of the books, which then, of course, goes to you. I added 2 books, the one I talked to you about, Into the Magic Shop, and then my favorite, which I forgot to put on, which is We Can Do This by Kate Sutherland. So I would love for you to get all of these books and references and to discuss them with Grant. Okay, Grant.
That's a lot. Thank you very much, Michelle. And we will send out a list of the books and the reading. We'll add those other ones in as well. So we'd just like to finish with one quick poll before we get to the questions. And I can see quite a few questions in there already. But the poll really is, do you feel you've taken something from today that will help you or help you progress in the way that you think and talk about money and purpose as a family? And a yes and no, and we've got a lot of yeses, which is great. That means we did what we set out to do. And then maybe if in the chat, we'd love to know which tool or technique or insight you think is most helpful. And it just helps us a little bit around where to steer these things in the future. So thank you for the poll answers, and I can see some bits coming into the chat. So if you could just add in there. And then I would just say, I should have said at the start of this, I was going to say Michelle is renowned throughout North America, but I think actually it's getting a little bit wider than that. So she's getting renowned not only in Canada and the US, but also in Europe as well. So maybe I go so far as to say she's becoming a little bit more worldwide renowned. But if there's anything you'd like to ask her now while she's here with us, feel free to put it in the chat, and we can utilize her expertise whilst we have it. And it looks like some of the things that people learn, the apocalypse slides, the 4 horsemen, listening and reducing emotion, the tools to get conversations unstuck. And I'm sure all of it is going to be helpful for people in one way, shape or form. And I think for myself, the stopping and thinking and being aware before jumping into conclusions is always a good thing. And I think a few people have said that. So if you do have questions, put them in the chat, and I see some there now. So the first one, Michelle, what advice do you give when a parent gets flooded extremely easily, or is heading in with a chip on their shoulder? It's hard to move forward when this happens. So I guess it's when a parent is flooded. What advice do you give going into that situation?
When a parent is easily flooded. So, this is a word, this is also becoming somewhat overused, but it's an important word, which is creating safety. And so top of mind, obviously it's a bigger discussion. I would say tapping into your compassion for the parent is a good start. If you're going in thinking or feeling animosity even towards that short circuit ability, because it is incredibly frustrating, I would recommend do your own work. Start with yourself and create safety for the other. There's a beautiful podcast, a little video, maybe I'll send this one as well, that I'm thinking of as I'm answering this question. And it's a little video on the meaning of the Zulu word sawubona. And I saw Bernie was on. Bernie, this is, if you're still here, this is for you too, because we talked about sawubona. And in this video, the speaker, Orland Bishop, says, sawubona is a greeting that says, I see you. It's not a how are you, it's I see you. And then deeper than that, it's who do I need to be that you might be seen? Who do I need to be that you might be free to be seen? And I'm drawing on that somewhat ancient Zulu greeting that when a parent is easily flooded, ask yourself, how do I create more safety? And what words do I use that downregulate or upregulate? How might I use inquiry to deeply and empathetically understand the flooding? What story might be between us that is causing that flooding? What possibility could we reach for that would increase the sense that I'm not blaming? And it's very hard work when someone is predisposed to hearing something as criticism. It's very careful work. And capacity building, repair, knowing how to soothe, pacing at time, no surprises. So I hope the person that answered the question, there's a little bit in there. I would say that is not easy when walking in, boy, what are the chances I'll navigate this one? And I would say start with yourself.
And none of this is easy. I guess that's why we're here. It's and I like the point you made earlier that sometimes you can get stuck in the plight thing, and if you don't try, you're never going to move out of it. So even just asking a question. So one talking about the heart, and I know you mentioned earlier the work with the brain and the heart, but how do you manage history of personality and experience with moving forward with an open and trusting heart?
Yeah, that's it's. I read this morning that Adam Grant had done a podcast on Succession, or he was in the Succession. I can't remember. I just read this LinkedIn post, and apparently Adam Grant had said vulnerability before trust. And I just really like that. So I'm going to put that into my response, which is our ability to have the courage of vulnerability. That soft belly, strong back. We know our boundaries, but we take the risk to trust. We take the risk to trust, and we take the position that we will suspend past patterns. We will suspend our anticipation of a repeat. And yet there's another lovely concept that we have a gift of pessimism and patterns. So it's not to say that you shouldn't be mindful of pattern, but you suspend your hunch. I know you're probably going to do this again because I know you. Actually say, I don't know you actually, not today. I'm going to be vulnerable. I invite you to show me something new. Not as a test, but you could tell yourself. Don't tell the other person. I'm inviting them. I'm open to hearing new. I'd love to hear something new. So predisposition yourself to hearing something new. There was a slide that Grant and I debated keeping, and I loved the slide, but it was too busy. And it was a slide from Isaac's where what I liked about the slide is it showed a map between starting a conversation and intentionally making decisions. Do I turn this into a debate? Do I turn this into conflict? Or do I turn this towards generative? I have a choice. And I try so many times in my own family where I sometimes say to myself, stop and back out because I've gone too far down the map right now. I've been caught and I'm going to go in fighting. So I just have to back out and say, I'm coming back. I'll make the tea. Right? I just can't do it. I'm out of capacity. I've triggered myself. I've told myself a terrible story and start again.
Maybe we can add that slide in when we share them. Okay, so we've got a bunch of questions. I'll ask one more quick one. And then for everybody, we can see some names. So that's great. And then we can try and get back to people. But one final one, and if we could try and keep it short. How do you reduce the feeling from your child that they think they can handle things better than you?
How do you reduce the feeling? Was it feeling? Yeah. How do you reduce the feeling that they can? Oh, that's such a lovely power question. And I often see that actually, where the children are quite disturbed that that their parents in positions are not doing it as well as they think they can. There's not a quick silver bullet answer on this one, but there is a design of an inquiry together where the vulnerability even of the parent could be, I'm open to your feedback on how you think I'm doing this. I'd love to talk that through with you to understand your perceptions of what I'm doing. I'd love to share with you mine. Let's see what we come up with on how you're doing, how I'm doing. Yeah, I also spotted the one question that came up on my screen, Grant, if I can quickly jump into this. Someone asked about different abilities in children, some in the business, some not, some understanding, some no idea, compensation, fairness. There is a pathway to productive on all of that. That pathway starts with respective and fair, what is considered to be fair process. So it's not surprising those in the business and out of the business with what you're going to share, but coming together and agreeing together on what is shared and agreeing together on how to determine fairness. Your family help you to determine fairness together. And the most important thing is the process and not the number. So very often I see lots of work going on to generate a number, and then people cannot believe that somebody doesn't like it. But that's because they never agreed to the process by which the number was determined. I hope what I'm saying makes sense,
Yeah,
but
I
that's
think
a
there's
very
psychological
important part.
research as well that if people are involved in the process, are more likely to buy into the outcome and than if they're just given an outcome. So I think.
Can I say one more thing? One more thing. There was a question on consensus. That is a very specific art, reaching consensus. It is not something that says wait around until we all agree. There is a way of creating the framework to get to consensus when you want to. So I encourage that, of course, you can't do this in 30 minutes, but that's also a very particular topic.
I think I think the one thing we've learned from today, apart from some amazing tools and techniques, and really appreciate everything that you've given, but this is there's a lot of inquiry about this topic. There's a lot of people who want to learn and do better.
There's a lot of good questioners. It bodes really well.
I think that's all we've got time. We've got a lot of questions there. We will try and get back to everybody, or we will get back to everybody that asked the question, and we'll come back with something. We'll share the resources so people have that, and then there will be a recording as well, because I realized there was quite a lot of information now, and I think it's all really great stuff. So you should be able to listen to it again or watch it again. Michelle, I really just want to say thank you. Thank you for coming and sharing all of the your great knowledge with our valued clients, and for those that aren't clients or prospects or people new to Genus. When we end this session, the internet browser, if you just stay on, you'll get prompted with a little questionnaire, and we'd love to know your thoughts and feedback. It's really helpful to improve our future webinars and what we provide for you in the future. So your input directly impacts what we're going to do for you going forwards. And then we will send a recording out via email for those that were here. And yeah, if you want to share it or revisit or any questions afterwards, obviously reach out to us on LinkedIn or just via your portfolio manager at Genus. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.